Hi, Papa Yeager here with This Day in History. April 28th, 1789, the Mutiny on the Bounty. This is when Fletcher Christian led a mutiny against Captain Bligh. Captain Bligh fell victim to 3 mutinies throughout his lifetime because he was not an easy captain to get along with. He could be very condescending to his men. The Bounty had set out in December of 1787 to Tahiti, where they were going to get breadfruit saplings to deliver to the West Indies. These breadfruit saplings were going to be used to feed enslaved passengers. Remember, this is the late 1700s. Slavery, the slave trade is real. So the Bounty was getting these breadfruits to feed the slaves. They spent 5 months in Tahiti. While they were there, Fletcher Christian fell in love with a woman from Tahiti. After the mutiny, they mutinied. Fletcher Christian and his followers set Captain Bligh adrift on a boat, an open boat. They did not expect him to survive. Nobody did. They thought they were putting him to death. However, despite Captain Bligh's faults, he was an amazing seaman. And he was able to navigate and survive more than 3,000 miles on the open water on a small boat. Fletcher Christian and his men originally to flee, knowing that they were now criminals. They were going to be sought by the authorities. They went to Tahiti. They realized they really probably shouldn't stay there, but some of Fletcher Christian's men decided to stay. Fletcher Christian, however, left with some people from Tahiti, women and a few men, and they eventually settled on Pitcairn Island, a volcanic island. The men who had been left behind in Tahiti were eventually found by British sailors and taken back to England, where they were hanged. Fletcher Christian and his men that went to Pitcairn Island, however, did live there. They had children, and many of the people that live there are descended from Fletcher Christian and his men. Anyway, that's This Day in History, April 28th, 1789, was the Mutiny on the Bounty. This story is important to me because my dad loved the story of the Mutiny on the Bounty. He had read the 3 books. It was Mutiny on the Bounty, Men Against the Sea, and then Pitcairn Island. I think those were the titles. And I read them my dad talked about them when I was younger. As I grew up, I eventually read them because my dad talked about them and enjoyed them so much. So this is one of those historical tales that whenever I read about it or encounter it, I think of my dad because he's the one that introduced me to the story.